Sustainable development in the Amazon is something which has been debated for a long time. Many conferences in many parts of the world, many of those carried out outside of the Amazon, and many of those dealt with the balanced participation of Amazonians. Sometimes people ask me about what is my view of the future of the Amazon. And my first answer is the future of the Amazon will depend on the future of its people, of the residents of the Amazon. So if we want to invest in a good future for the Amazon, the first and probably most valuable investment is in early childhood development, from 0 to 6 years of age, when we have the critical process of developing the cognitive capacity of individuals to learn. And that depends on having good nutrition, love and affection, and stimulus. If kids don't have this at this age, then they will not be able to learn how to manage a forest or fisheries or a protected area or whatever. So the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals, I think, is something essential for us to look at sustainable development in the Amazon. And I would suggest that first we should look at people and the Amazonians and see how we can improve their livelihoods, how we can provide relevant education, how we can reduce inequalities, how we can reduce poverty, how we can bring new technologies that facilitate management of natural ecosystems in a way that they can sustain production and they can sustain the provision of environmental services. Promotion of sustainable development in the Amazon is not something that should be discussed in workshops only, in air-conditioned rooms. It should be discussed in the communities where the challenges are being faced by those inhabitants. And the solutions are not necessarily coming from universities, although universities play a very important role. Solutions are not going to come from governmental offices, although public policies are very important. But for the most part, solutions have to have a social learning process by which local people debate the problems, design solutions, implement them, evaluate successes and failures, and through a social learning process, they evolve. So we need a type of development practice that is participatory in nature, that is educational in nature, that it provides people locally the knowledge and the tools to design their own solutions. And in doing so, they should be in direct contact with university and other research centers so that there is a feedback of these problems by the researchers that can engage in helping co-design and co-evaluate the solutions for sustainable development. And similarly, these local and bottom-up processes have to be supported by sound policies. And here we have a huge challenge, which is the challenge of linking local, bottom-up design of processes with top-down public policies. So this is not unique of the Amazon, but it's particularly challenging for the Amazon given what we have discussed previously about the isolation of many of these communities. There is a power deficit of isolated communities in the deep Amazon, and the reason is very simple. It's cost. For a president of an association to go to Manaus by boat it takes sometimes one day, sometimes 2, 3, 4, several days, and costs lots of money. So if the leader wants to press for better education, for better health, or whatever, it's extremely expensive. And these people have very limited resources. So they are in a very different way from the urban poor, because urban poor populations can press local governments at a much lower cost, at a much easier way than those in isolated communities. So the challenge for sustainable development in the Amazon, and in particularly the deep Amazon, has to do with how to empower local populations. So that's my first lessons learned that I would like to share with you. The need to have participatory processes that are able to generate solutions which draw on local knowledge and also build bridges, what Daryl Posey called in a historic paper, ideological bridges to the future, the bridge between traditional folk knowledge and scientific knowledge. And this should all be supported by public policies. But the bottom line is the participatory engagement of local communities in the design of these solutions and the implementation and the evaluation of those solutions. We also need to have an integrated approach. That's the second lesson that I would like to highlight with you. One cannot focus on forest management or education or health or whatever. One has to think of programs that are holistic in nature, because there are many barriers to sustainability. So if you solve just the problem of sustainable fisheries management, for example, and not the drinking water component of sustainability, then we're not going to make the leap change which is necessary. So it's essential to have a holistic approach, and that's the second lesson learned that I'd like to share with you. Programs, projects have to go beyond the disciplinary thinking, beyond the institutional limits. And this is a challenge, because oftentimes institutions have a know-how and a mandate which is focused on a narrow part of sustainability, whereas the challenge needs to include all. So the answer to that is that we need to work with partnerships. In the case of Amazonas Sustainable Foundation, for example, we have over 100 partners, and that was the way we found to deal with the lack of skills that one has in each individual organization. So partnerships is essential to deal with a holistic approach. Another challenge that we have to have this holistic approach is human skills, professional skills. For the most part, universities don't educate people on multidisciplinary thinking. So we have agronomists who know about agronomy, foresters, fisheries management, sociologists, anthropologists, economists, and so on, each of them with a very isolated piece of knowledge. So we need integrated views. So I think that one challenge that the Amazonian universities have is to introduce cross-disciplinary thinking and cross-disciplinary problem solving in a way that students at the undergraduate level, graduate level are able to understand and deal with all the complexities of a holistic approach to sustainable development. Another lesson learned is a focus on the design of a multi-stakeholder process. I've mentioned already partnerships, but from a larger perspective, we have to have broad coalitions of institutions in order to deal with the problems. And these coalitions have to face the big challenges that we have. And one of the main goals we should aim for in terms of sustainable development in the Amazon is to identify which of the global sustainable development goals are most relevant to each area, to each community, and which are the priorities for them. And it may be that there's some places where the focus should be on reducing poverty, whereas the other should be on dealing with urban processes. But it's important to identify especially locally relevant sustainable development goals and targets.